Hi everyone, my name is Roxalana. I'm an immigration consultant at Kachuk Immigration. Today is another episode at Kachuk Immigration and everything else. So today we just not going to talk about immigration, but about settlement, reintegration into a new country, new society, new community. And it might be very, very difficult for you as an immigrant to leave everything behind, to leave your social life, your financial life, and to just start everything new in Canada. And it could actually be really mentally hard on you. Mm-hmm. So today I have a great guest who will actually talk more about this topic, but reintegrating as an immigrant and actually dealing with and coping with a lot of stress, depression, anxiety, and so on. And please introduce yourself. So tell us more about yourself and what you do.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I really appreciate it, and it's just really lovely to be here and have this conversation with you. So I'm Yola, and I work as a relational skills expert and as a coach. I have a pretty significant presence online where I teach people a lot of practical relational skills, oftentimes focused on intimate relationships, like with your spouse or your partner, sometimes focused on friendships or relationships at work. So really we work on fine-tuning those skills, understanding, how to connect with people on a deeper level, what are some of the barriers to connection. And so that's really my area of expertise and things that I really enjoy talking about and posting about.
That's amazing. So how did you get into it?
I think so. Previously, I worked in corporate, right? Mm-hmm. And so I have a bachelor's in economics or bachelor's of business in economics, and I worked in corporate for a while. I think I eventually started my own therapy journey. So in doing therapy, I really just enjoyed how much I was discovering about myself. I also really enjoyed how certain challenges of your own personal beliefs, certain practical tools can really kind of change the trajectory of how you think and the way you apply yourself and how you grow as a person. And so I felt really inspired by that. It resonated with me. So then I went and I did my master's in science and psychology. And from there, I knew that I just love talking to people and trying my best to kind of help guide people in a really practical way. So
100%. It's so difficult, even like dealing with such a change. Change is a big thing.
Yeah.
Generally, it's a stress, right? So when you're a newcomer, what would you say is the biggest first emotions that you experience when you're in a new country?
Yeah, so for me, I immigrated as well, right? But I was a child, so I immigrated when I was 9 years old. I think as a kid, it's, especially I didn't even know the language, right? So for me as a child, it was quite scary, right?
Yeah.
And really you feel so isolated. I think for my parents as well, who were adults at the time, there's this huge isolation because no matter where you immigrate, you are immediately cut off from that network, right? And it's not only the network, but the culture is different and you're adjusting to a completely new way.
Cultural shock, right?
Exactly. A new way of relating to people and connecting with people. Like a really simple one is Canadians start with small talk everywhere.
Correct.
But a lot of other cultures, people, they say what they mean or they don't really connect with you unless you get into deeper conversation. So there is that cultural shock, right? And adjusting to that is quite difficult.
For sure, and it's really hard to understand for a lot of even modern cultures. Like for instance, when I'm coming from, depression was never a thing, or anxiety was never a thing. Like, what are you talking about? Go work,
Yes.
You don't need to have a time to feel depression or anxiety. Or basically, when I was feeling stressed, when we immigrated, I immigrated, by the way, when I was 17, and it was already like a teenager.
Right. Yeah.
I was crying, I wanted to go home. I didn't feel like it's my home for a long time, maybe like not just a few months, but a few years, right? Mm-hmm. So it takes a while, but now as I'm working in immigration, I do see a lot of other people having those emotions, and they just really want to go home. It's really hard, especially if there is no unity with your family, because a lot of immigrants, when they come to Canada, they also leave the family behind in most of the cases. Let's say you're coming on the work visa and your wife or your spouse, right, your husband is back home, right? And kids too, right? So it's really difficult. How would you suggest whenever you come here as a Canadian temporary foreign worker, right, to deal with the distance, like a long distance relationship with your family? What would you suggest how to deal with this?
I think it's a hard balance to strike, to be honest, and I think it's a balance between the way that you integrate to your life here and then what you're able to share with your family back home, right? So, for example, one of the things is as you integrate here, as you try to become more comfortable here, you might want to find other people in your own community who are also immigrants. So I'm Albanian, I might search the Albanian community, you might search for the Ukrainian community, right? And so that can be helpful because you as a person are still a little bit more comfortable in your own community. You might also then slowly start, those people that are part of your community that have dealt with the process can help introduce you to other Canadians, right, who are outside of your culture. And I think as you have this experience, communicating with the family back home, what you're learning, what you're doing, I think to stay in touch with long distance relationships, it really helps to really actually bring them into your world of what you're learning, what you're experiencing emotionally, right? Have set schedules and set times for when you communicate so that expectation is there, so you're not really losing touch, right?
Yeah.
And I think if here you have some combination between being integrated into like your diaspora here as well as the Canadian community here, there's a lot of talking points for you to make your family back home feel like they're a part of your life.
For sure. And you know what, I'm really feeling that Canada is one of the best countries in that sense, because we're not just integrating to a new country where it's just one community, one type of nation. We have so many immigrants in this country where you can find your little home, right?
Yes.
So as you said, you're Albanian coming to Albanian community. Me as Ukrainian, I actually did that. Like when I immigrated, the Ukrainians took me with a warm heart, and it did really help. Your friendships, your community actually can support you and push you towards like finding jobs, finding new friends, finding maybe new opportunities, starting a business, and so on, right? So that's really amazing. Another thing I actually want to bring to your attention is that what I noticed from client speaking is that going back to cultural shock, right? They talk about what they had there versus what they have here, right?
Yeah.
So how would you suggest, because that missing out, let's say, on let's say spending money. For instance, I had this back home. I had a job. I was a professor. I was maybe owning a car and owning a house.
Yes.
I had this, and here they start over, right?
Yes.
It's a new beginning.
Yes.
How would you cope with that, as just having nothing, like from zero? What would you do?
I think maybe it's difficult, right? Because there's a certain level of competency you achieve in your life back home, right? Whether it's competency professionally, whether it's with your network, whether it's with the things you do, right? And so I think the adjustment is with that, there's the competency and then there's the goals. It's not that dissimilar to also changing careers, right? Like when you start new, you lose that feeling of like, I've built myself and I've built these things, right? And so the expectation adjustment is a big deal, right? So thinking to yourself, okay, well, I'm going to actually build new competencies. I'm going to be able to integrate knowledge I have. You're not completely starting over. You're actually, there's aspects of the skills you have that you can use to really push yourself forward faster here, right?
Learn new skills, right?
Exactly. So even let's say when you have a career change, right? Because it's easier to speak to that having personally done it. There's aspects of my corporate life that actually I notice I integrate more and more into this type of business life, even though you wouldn't think they relate. So it's not like you've completely lost that part of yourself. I think you need to understand that you won't feel that level of competency and you won't feel as good about what you have here. But I think as you strive for new goals that you might set for yourself or new competencies that you want to reach, you'll notice how those things that you already had start to integrate to push you a little bit faster or to make you feel a little bit more well-rounded. I think also focusing on why you chose to come in the first place and how you're striving for that goal.
Actually, an interesting topic on choosing, right? Because yes, like personally, I deal with a lot of immigrants who choose to come to Canada, right? But I also work with people who had to either escape or leave, not because they chose to, because they had to, right? Let's say a lot of Ukrainians, Iranians, a lot of from Palestine, from any other countries where, let's say, even because of your sex, right? Because of let's say you're being politically chased and so on. You're coming to Canada for the refuge and like for protection. How would you suggest those type of people who don't choose, right, to deal with that? Would you suggest, because they don't just feel stressed because they moved to a new country, they also feel stressed because they have post-traumatic stress from the potentially war, from the rest of their life, from the travel they have to make here, right? Is there any way that we could help them to deal with them? Do they need mentorship on that?
Yes, absolutely. And I think you're absolutely right that that's a completely different circumstance when it's not a choice. There's a lot of grief that comes with that, and I think there needs to be a lot of opportunity to be able to talk about what's happened to you if somebody is ready and comfortable, to be able to process some of that grief, again, to be surrounded with people from your own community so you don't feel alone in what you're going through. You know you're not the only one that's going through it. Programs that actually help work to, help somebody make sense of their experience, process their experiences emotionally, especially normally there is PTSD or CPTSD that comes up with that. So really helps, like from a counseling space, a therapeutic space, a mentorship space, just being involved both with people who can help guide you through that experience to make sense of it and process the grief, as well as people who can then help support you in terms of introducing you to other people who have lived through it, and then can also push you forward that have maybe managed to grow on top of that experience. That experience will always be a part of you, and it shapes you, but to give you the opportunity to create kind of like a path forwards that helps you grow and build above it.
Yeah, and on top of that, government of Canada provides lots of benefits, right? So as I know, a lot of for children, for like single moms or single parents, right? A lot of things that will be provided to newcomers, and that's why Canada is great. And I think it's amazing that Canada can provide that protection, and it's available to many Canadians as well, right?
Yeah.
So that's a really good thing. Talking about a relationship, I know you deal with a lot of couples too, and you and your partner also, I know you're big on social media, so it's really amazing to see what an audience you have, right? When you're a new couple coming to Canada, right, you've been through all the stress, you reintegrated, right? Sometimes it's really tough to maintain that perfect marriage relationship in the new setting, right? Because you always change. Have you experienced any of the newcomers talking to you, getting coaching on the relationship, or just generally couples, which struggles they usually experience?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think so. I'll put it this way: like when you put yourself in a new environment, it's like you're throwing a bunch of excess ammunition to your own personal growth. Let's say, so you're throwing a lot of incentive to grow faster because you are exposed to different thoughts, you're exposed to different environments, people, culture, etc. And so really, with that exposure usually comes the fact that you're adapting, and so you're changing as a person. And when you and your partner are both kind of thrown into this new environment, it's a lot of fast change. And usually that's the thing about any relationship, is as people develop and change, are they really including one another in that change? Are they growing together, or are they growing apart, right? So even as you come here, maybe where you're from, there's more traditional family roles, but you come here and you see new ones. How are you talking about that in your relationship? How are you integrating that with one another? Are you in alignment? Same thing with parenting. It's a different parenting style here. It's very kid-centric, right? So are there things you want to adopt, or are they things that you don't want to adopt, right? And it's being able to, as you're having all of these experiences, being able to self-reflect on what that experience is like for you, what you like and don't like, how it's changing you and your expectations of the relationship, and then bringing that conversation to your partner, right? I think a lot of the time where it's challenging for couples is that they will grow at their own pace, and they might start to look at their partner differently, and they might start to feel distance from them because those critical conversations aren't happening, or there isn't as much of an open mind to that.
So in case when the new couple comes to Canada, right, or a new country, what would you say the top tips are for them to remain in a more or less happily ever marriage, right? What is the tips that you could say will be good to keep that good relationship in the marriage for the couple?
I would say just to initiate conversations around what you're experiencing as much as you can, and be able to really listen to your partner, right? Be able to really hear them on what their experience is without judgment. That's a big one, right? So just the way that you understand that more communication is probably going to be needed than you might even have required before to maintain the relationship. Trying to integrate into the community really helps, whether it's the community that's part of your diaspora, whether it's just you join clubs and things like that, but also doing it together, because that kind of teaches you, okay, how can I build a life here with my partner? What does that look like from a couple's perspective, or from a family perspective? What do people do here in that way? Right. So that, I think that's a really big one as well.
Having a similar hobbies, I know that you pick up on tennis as well.
Yeah, for you!
So having a similar interest, I would say a big hobby, right, in a relationship. So even right now, I feel like, for instance, I'm not saying it's a recommendation from me, but I find, let's say, if you're new to a country, maybe coming to, let's say, a new community, or studying, like if you're having struggles with English or French, right? You go and study together, right? Or you talk about it. So I think it's great to have like similar interest. Communication is the key, because you're here both alone, right? In this new country, so you have only each other, and I feel the new change could actually be a good thing, because it could actually make your relationship stronger if you stay together and keep each other strong too, right? Motivating, stimulating positive, what do you say? Positive reinforcement, right?
Yes.
Yeah. How would you say? Because coming from overseas myself, right? We never really talked about therapy. We never talked about different struggles, traumas.
Yes.
We actually been laughed at if. I don't know about other countries and communities, but when I talk from personal experience, it was not quite common to talk about mentorship and therapists and anything else about mental health, right? How important it is to have a mentor or a coach or just someone to talk to, especially when you're a newcomer?
I think that's a great question, and I think you're referring to the stigma around mental health, right? And to be honest, I think with social media, it's kind of become more widely acceptable, and you see that somebody who, let's say, goes to therapy or somebody who seeks that type of help, there isn't necessarily something just like wrong with that person. They might just be looking to develop, to grow, to gain clarity of thought. So I think as more and more people talk about it, it becomes more comfortable, but that might not have necessarily changed as much back home. Right, or the communities we come from. So it's the same where I come from as well, right? So that change is maybe more slower, and you feel a little bit made fun of, or something along those lines. I would say it can be very helpful, especially if we better understand what it is, right? And what the purpose is, right? So for example, with counseling or coaching, really they're there, or especially mentorship, they're there to help you with a specific goal, to guide you forwards towards meeting that goal, and just to provide expertise in terms of helping you find direction within yourself. They're not there to tell you what to do. They're there to help clear those mental roadblocks, to help you gain that self-awareness, to build certain skills so that you can then meet whatever goals you might have, right? So it's just development, it's personal development. With therapy, there's a little bit of that, and then there's maybe also a little bit of just kind of, again, making sense of your experiences, especially if you've gone through traumatic experiences. Maybe you might have a certain diagnosis that can help you make sense of everything you've lived through and bring it to light. And it's like that moment of oh, okay, that's why that was happening, or that's why I was feeling that way, and coping with it.
And just to be clear, to be honest, sometimes when even the closest one, your partner or parent or your child, sometimes you feel like maybe talking to someone else, right? Because you want to provide the message to them, but you're not sure how to properly do it.
Yes.
So it's really important, I feel, having that mentor for yourself. And I think it's so underestimated, because you simply have someone to talk to. And it's sometimes really important. It's all good to journal, it's good to talk to someone, express yourself, not to be afraid to do so. Because the more you do that, the more you are more skilled on communication with other people, right? Especially your loved ones. Because we can always say harsh things, versus do we really need to, right? And especially in a new environment, we get so frustrated, because I deal with a lot of immigrants, and sometimes they get so frustrated why I can't get a visa. The just visa process can be so frustrating. And on top of that, you have to deal with all their relationship types, including your family, friendships, social. That is really tough as a newcomer. And as we both are newcomers to this country, we know better that it's really important to deal with. I wish someone was talking to me when I was going through that. I was not aware about this as a new person in Canada, and I wish someone talked to me more, right? Okay, another topic I would like to discuss with you is the following question. What would you say are unspoken expectations in Canada for newcomers?
That's a really good question, and there's definitely cultural changes depending on where you're coming from. I think a big one is the way that Canadians communicate, right? So socially, Canadians really, they like their small talk. They show up as very polite, and but they don't actually dive into intrusive questions, right? They don't dive into very deep or personal questions. And for some people, they might not be very used to that, like this politeness, right? They usually, you only reserve, you save that for the people that you're close to with, right?
Correct.
So that's definitely one of it. But then one of the things, but then when it comes to the professional work environment, the difference might be as well that Canadians actually have very low context when they speak, so they are explicit, they are direct, right? They get right down to business. Whereas in a lot of other cultures in a professional environment, you meet somebody for lunch, for dinner, you introduce them to your network, you build that trust before you get down to business. So the communication styles are different, and learning the nuances can really help. another big one that I experienced actually, even today was a thing, time, right? So here you are on time because it is, you show up when you say you show up because that's how you respect other people and their time. But in some cultures, it's actually more important that you're focused on the present moment, that you show you're flexible and accommodating, because that's how you're building that relationship. And it's not so much about being on the hour or rushing, but it's a lot more about like fostering that relationship so people are flexible.
Because Canada, what I hear is work, work, work. And in some sort of way, it is true. We do work because Canada is not cheap. It is quite expensive to live here. But it's quite a privilege in some sort of way because we are a safe country. We are actually able to build the future here, and there's a lot of opportunities here, which I find fantastic. So it's important to notice those trends, right?
The differences,
when we come to Canada, because are we polite? Really? You know, because we always say, hi, how are you? Good, good. But in reality, you might go through a lot of other things inside, right?
Yes.
So that's why, again, we need to have a mentorship in coaching in relationships sometimes, because some people do struggle with that.
Yes. Yeah.
Finalizing our conversation. So lastly, I want to ask you about how Canadians actually can thrive in Canada, not just to survive, right, but also do well in the new environment. What would you say your recommendations are?
Honestly, let's say from like a cultural integration perspective, I'll break it down to two simple things to start. Learn the small talk, honestly. It's really helpful to just observe how other people do it. Observe, how are you? How's the weather? What sports are your kids in? Whatever. Just so that you have that entry point to the relationship so that you can then build more meaningful relationships with people. So it's not about letting go of your own culture, but it's just knowing how to enter a new cultural environment and kind of observing and being able to apply that. And then the second thing I think we talked about already, try to join communities and events, things around you. Even if you work, usually a lot of work environments in Canada, they have a lot of sports that they do, or learning how to speak and lead workshops that they do. There's a lot of events that go on that you can be a part of. And that is really low stakes environment to build connections and friendships and to enter communities, because you're not focused on forcing the friendship, but it's going to happen naturally as you interact with people. And it just helps you integrate into that community so that you expand your network and you can reach out to more people for support.
Correct. And I feel sometimes the same person who may be having a different background, let's say you're coming from Albania, I'm coming from Ukraine. In that situation, we could come from different countries but find similar stress, similar challenges, because we've been through similar situations, and that could help us to connect and build friendship, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I do recommend our listeners just to connect more with other cultures as well, because you will be surprised how similar the experiences are, because we all come to a new environment. Just to give you a quick example, when I arrived to Canada, I was in high school, grade 12.
Yes.
And it was difficult because everyone knew each other.
Exactly.
But the moment I went to college, everyone was new. Okay?
Exactly. There's opportunity.
So it was so much easier. Everyone was so welcoming. I loved it, because everyone who came from different high school, different cultural backgrounds, also they were new ones into the new environment. So I think it's really good to have those connections and build more network. I just want to finalize with quick questions, okay? That's what I do with everyone. So just a quick question. Just don't think about anything. Just answer quickly, okay? So what's one thing you wish every newcomer knew before arriving in Canada?
Oh my God.
Something everyone should know before coming to Canada.
Ooh, I don't know. There's a lot of diversity here, which means that actually it's like you get to learn so much because you can integrate with so many different cultures from the one place, and you can actually choose things that you might also want to adapt to your own personality and lifestyle. So there's a lot of opportunity for you to grow from all these different cultures that people have and share, and languages.
Correct.
Just from where you are.
Just on the fun point, like there's so much different foods and cultures here. Like
such great experiences.
You can get Chinese, you can get Italian,
oh my God,
you can get Vietnamese, you can get Polish, Ukrainian, anything,
As a foodie, I love it.
I love it too. So coffee with a friend or a quiet evening alone?
A bit of both. Actually, I'm not so much of an alone person, so I say coffee with a friend. I want to chat, I want to just explore, get to know things.
I like both too. I'm such an extrovert and introvert at the same time.
Well, you need to recharge sometimes.
Yeah,
from
you
all
definitely need to recharge. If you could give newcomers only 3 words of advice, what would they be? Sorry.
3 words of advice. Find your community.
Okay, that's good. What's one Canadian tradition or lifestyle habit you've grown to love?
I do actually enjoy how focused on family people are here, right? Like, and on kids, and like really nurturing kids and doing well by the kids and the parenting. I really do enjoy that. There is such, I find that maybe it's a balance to strike between being a little too kid centric, but I also love that there is this focus on their education, on their activities, on integrating them with the family.
And finally, what does the feeling like home means to you?
I think being able to let my hair down, be relaxed, not feel particularly judged, feel like I'm surrounded by people who, even if I make a mistake, can still really understand me and who I am.
Yeah.
That would be it.
And for me, I'll just bring it up because it's really feeling like home, and I think what you brought, just being myself, being comfortable, is really important because a lot of us have pressure from back home as well. Mm-hmm. I talk to a lot of people who, like, let's say, have expectations from families, you know?
Yes.
I have people, let's say, from India, and the family pressure, like, why won't you get a permanent residency? Why won't you get married? Why won't you get the job of your dream right away? And it's not so simple. It's not easy to be a newcomer and get all these things done. Permanent residency is not easy right now. You have to have a proper strategy. Look at your file. Building a career in Canada, especially when you're trying to get permanent residency, sometimes it's difficult because Canada has specific needs for the targeted occupations, and your occupation might not be there. And at the same time, your goal is to become a permanent resident and build a career.
Yeah, exactly.
And then finding a spouse at the same time, you know, because your entire family pressures you. It's
hard.
So my advice in that sense, take one thing at a time.
Yes,
because if you're like, what is priority? Maybe permanent residency is priority. So pick that, for instance, first. Don't go easy on your mental health because you need to take care of yourself for sure, right?
You can't pour from an empty cup, right? So if you're taking care of your mental health and you're making sure that you are at least feeling relatively okay within yourself, you're more resilient to handle the challenges, like, you know, when you're applying for permanent residency, or even when you're interacting with people, you interact with more confidence if you want to meet a spouse, right? So you actually need to feel good first for you to tackle these challenges.
And just simply concentrate on you, because basically you can always look at other and compare yourself, as you said, social media, right? Everything else, especially other immigrants, so they already bought the house in Canada, right? Or these immigrants, maybe these people already been here, or they came with more money, right? You can't compare yourself to other. Concentrate on you and you'll be happier. Build yourself, compete only with yourself, and always think positively, because I think that's important, and building strong, good quality relationship, right? On this positive note, I would like to thank you very much. Thank you for your time and good advice. I advise listeners to always maybe look for advice and coaching if you need to. This person is perfect for it.
Thank you for having me.
I really recommend. Yeah, I really recommend, because I personally didn't have anyone when I came to Canada. I wish I had you when I had no one, because I cried a lot, so it was really difficult. But now, you know, 16 years after, I'm definitely integrated. But you know, a lot of people. It would have been easier. Yeah, it would be so much easier. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was a great conversation.